Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And a good morning to you. It's 10:10, a little past 10. Don't know what that means, but it's the truth. Welcome to the program. It's also Columbus Day for anybody who still thinks he discovered America. He never set foot in America. So happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Now we've got guests today, and I want to get right to them, if I may, because they're extraordinary people, and I can't wait to talk to them, and I'm sure you can't wait to hear what they have to say. I'm hoping they're both going to be with us. Claire Van Kampen is a director, a composer, a playwright, and it is she who has directed the extraordinary production currently at the Byam Theater downtown. Also, I hope joining us is Mark Rylance, who is also in the theater, a rather well-known thespian. Americans would be most impressed by the fact that he's an Oscar winner, but he's won everything: Tonys, BAFTAs, Oliviers, and he and she happened to be husband and wife, and they also are working on an incredible production that I cannot wait to hear about, along with Steven Speilberg, on the Homestead steel strike. I believe that's going to be a made-for-television movie. So, wow, a lot going on that they have their hands in, and it's a pleasure to introduce them. Are one or both of you there?
We are. We're both here. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me, taking the time. Can we get first to, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Idaspe?
Idaspe, you pronounce it perfectly. Yeah.
All right. Idaspe is the opera, which is currently at the Byam. This is staged by Quantum Theater in collaboration with Chatham Baroque and the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, and just a bevy of international talent, not the least of which is you, Claire Van Kampen, as the director. So the thing that astonishes me about this is the backstory to the opera itself, which seems to be operatic in and of itself. This is the first production since 1730.
Correct. Yes, it had an outing in Venice in the festival there in 1730, and for reasons we don't know, it seems to have sunk without trace. We found the manuscript of it in an online archive, but it hasn't been performed since then, which is extraordinary, isn't it? Because I think it's a very, very beautiful piece, and everyone's being really surprised by it.
Yes, it's extremely odd. Now, the composer, are you mounting the exact same opera that person back in the 1700s penned?
Well, the interesting thing here is the composer's actually the brother of a very, very famous, in those days they were called castrati, castrato called Farinelli. And I did a play about Farinelli, which ran on Broadway. So I already knew about the family. And then when I discovered this opera was by his brother, and it was written for Farinelli to shine in as a young singer, I was really intrigued about it. So luckily we found this manuscript, and Chatham Baroque spent the important COVID time where they couldn't actually do concerts. They spent all that time transcribing it onto a modern score so we could all read it. And It is pretty much entire, yes. But for a couple of arias, which I changed about, it's all there. And it's absolutely beautiful music.
This is amazing. I guess what's even more amazing to me is that it's here in Pittsburgh. I mean, you guys ain't Pittsburghers, and God knows this wasn't it just seems odd. So how did it all come together?
Well, Carla Booth is a real visionary. Quantum have been working here for a while, and they do extraordinary projects. And she really wanted to do a Vivaldi opera. She came to see Farinelli and the King on Broadway, and she loves the Baroque. And so she said to me, would you do this opera called Bajazet, and by Vivaldi? And I listened to it, and there was one aria in it that was amazing. And then I discovered that aria wasn't by Vivaldi at all. It was by this guy Brodsky, and that's where all the treasure started. And I hunted down Idaspe, and I said to Carla, we should do this opera. No one's done it. We should do it. And Carla just is so courageous. She just raised the money. And when you say Pittsburgh, there are a lot of people who love the arts in Pittsburgh and are prepared to be philanthropic and give money so that these very rare, wonderful pieces under these visionary artistic directors, that they can happen. So that's how this came about.
Just amazing. Now I am not an aficionado of opera. So when you say castrati, obviously that was when they literally castrated young boys, right? So that their voices would stay soprano-like and pristine.
Well, yeah, it was a thing in the 18th century. It was a pretty customary thing to do in Italy, because people had large families, and if they had several boys, unfortunately, they castrate a couple of them on spec, hope that they'd become like NFL stars are now,
Oh my God.
Castrati stars of their day. And of course, a lot of them didn't. A lot of them failed, and they, didn't have good voices. And the suicide rate amongst young men was very high. And so that's a very tragic side of what was an extraordinary voice that, of course, we will never hear. We will never know what that's like. There's one recording of an old castrato, but he's sort of in his dotage when he records it. So it's not a fair record of what it must have sounded like.
So that begs the question, if this was written for a castrati, and we don't have any, who does a soprano, that a woman takes the role?
Well, sometimes, and usually they're mezzos, and in our opera, the person singing what would have been sung by Farinelli, a role called Dario, that Farinelli, obviously wowed them with in 1730, that's been sung by Vivica Jeannot, who is a fantastic mezzo-soprano, who, she's been called the Serena Williams of the opera world. She can do dazzling runs and trills and all kinds of aerobatics with her voice that you just wouldn't believe. So she's singing that role. But John Holliday is singing one of the other, what we call now countertenor roles. So he sings very, very high, and it sounds probably, I think, as close to a castrato as you could get. But I assure you, John, not a castrato.
The Post-Gazette, and excuse my voice, in its review said that the sheer talent of the individual artists involved in this production is staggering.
Yes, it is. We have a very diverse cast too, which is very unusual for Baroque opera, and shouldn't be. So we draw on all kinds of Americans from all types of American society to bring this cast together, but they are all excellent. We have an Iranian American playing the lead male role, who is a tenor. We have an Iranian Jewish person singing the captain of the guard. It's an extraordinary collection of very, very vivid people and voices, and they are all excellent. So I'm absolutely thrilled, and even more so, they are lovely. They've been lovely to work with, all of them. So it's been a great pleasure.
So, Mark, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Oh, good. Did you have anything to do with this? Do you guys collaborate when do you work together on something like this or not?
Well, I'll just go and get Claire a cup of tea and a piece of toast in the morning when she's writing music and doing this kind of work. Yeah. Okay. But no, I didn't have anything to do with it artistically.
Okay. But you can we talk a bit about, you are both working on this Homestead project?
Yeah, we are. Yes, we are. And we do work together when Shakespeare's Globe opened in London, Sam Wanamaker's project, and it was that project that brought me to Pittsburgh in 2003. I was the artistic director and Claire was the director of music, and we've worked a lot on things together. That's been one of the joys of our marriage.
Wonderful. It's wonderful that you can do that. But why Homestead? What drew you? I mean, I think it's an extraordinary story and history. But what hooked you?
Well, we both came here first of all in 1991 when I was playing Hamlet for the public theatre over in Allegheny City, and Claire had done the music for that. But then we came back again in 2003. And one day, when I was playing in Twelfth Night in the Cabaret Centre next to the New O'Reilly Theatre, and one day a school teacher friend of mine said, "Oh, I'd like to take you to this house," and he took me up to Clayton, Henry Clay Frick's house, where his little daughter died. Swallowed a pin, and the pin moved all around her internal organs before it exited, and she died at age 6, a very tragic death, just the year before the Homestead strike. And he was unable to attend her bedside at times because he was having great. Hello, you okay?
Yes, I am. Hello? I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm here.
He was having great difficulties. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mark. I'm sorry.
It's okay. He was having great difficulties in Moorwood, down in the Connellsville area, right near Mount Pleasant, with strikes down there. And so there was a kind of connection between his personal grief and tragedy and the hardness of his actions in the Homestead strike, bringing the Pinkertons men in, that interested me. And I was looking for a play at that time for Shakespeare's Globe with modern characters who had Shakespearean qualities to them. Of course, then what I discovered, so Frick and Carnegie and Mellon, these people are known, around the world. But what I discovered was a much more interesting story of people like Honest John McCluckie, the Burgess of Homestead at that time, and a man called Beeswax Taylor and William Armstrong, Mother Jones, all these extraordinary, brave people fighting for the rights of working people in America, the 8-hour day. Most people, I think that May Day, the international celebration of Labor Day, was something perhaps made up in Russia, but it was made up here in America in 1886, and that was all very new history to me. And so I got very interested in the relationship between powerful individuals like Mr. Frick and the community. They need each other, but they don't often get on so well, do they?
Good God, no. Beeswax Taylor. I never heard that name. That's marvelous.
Oh, yeah.
He was. Tell me about.
Beeswax Taylor is an extraordinary guy. A lot of these guys, of course, fought in the Civil War and had a keen sense of the republic. What a republic would be, where everyone is treated equal. And Beeswax got into politics, and he used to write poetry and sing songs on the platforms. And he was the Burgess of Homestead the year before Honest John McCluskey. He's very involved in the 1877 Roundhouse strike, and he's an extraordinary kind of Falstaffian character. I think of Honest John McCluskey a bit like Henry V, and Beeswax Taylor as Falstaff, larger than life, and very brave. You know, when Honest John McCluskey is a politician fighting for labor rights, they burn his house down. The people who were against him. It was tough in those days.
Oh my, it was tough. And yet, you know, Carnegie gets a lot of credit because he put up all these wonderful, libraries and things that the poor souls who worked for him never had a day off to make use of.
That's right. No, that's right. And arguably the philanthropy that he put into the universities here in Pittsburgh and the culture here in Pittsburgh has helped draw the modern technology people to this city and has benefited this city nowadays. But the trouble for me is the cruelty with which he made that money.
Yeah.
And he got, funnily enough, once he determined to give all his money away, and he did. I mean, he sets a benchmark of the 400 million he got paid by Morgan for Carnegie Steel when Morgan turned it into U.S. Steel. I think he gives something like 395 million of it away, which is a hell of a lot of money in the early, 1905 to 1919 when he dies. But when he determines to do this, he gets even harder on the working people, determining to make more money because he's going to give it away. And immediately he retires. He creates things like pensions for teachers and compensation if you're injured in the workplace, and all kinds of incredible things for that working community. But why didn't he do it during the time that they were working? Because they had very, very hard conditions while they worked for him in those plants, Braddock and Homestead and Duquesne and all those places.
You know, I was reading that a worker in Homestead could get frostbite on his ears while working at a furnace in which the steel boiled at 3,000 degrees. That's the kind of conditions. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I was talking with a great friend of mine up. We went up to Johnstown because that's part of the story too. Very few people know about that. The 2,200 people who perished up there, and Mr. Frick and Mellon and Carnegie were trustees of the South Forks Hunting and Fishing Club. That was responsible for that.
Oh yes, yes.
But I was up there with a friend of mine, Nick Molnar, who was a miner. I think he was leader of one of the unions, president of one of the unions up there back in the 70s. And he came out of the Vietnam War and went into a steel mill up there. I think it was maybe it wasn't the Cambria one, another one, but he was telling me the other day about an event where he nearly lost his arm because the processing plant was so fast. The workers, the faster the more you made, the more you got paid. But when he nearly lost his arm this day with a huge bit of steel falling and him jumping back just in time, he thought, I'm getting out of steel and going into mining. So that's how he ended up being a miner. I mean, the working conditions are incredible, incredibly brave what these laborers put up for. And I'm not sure they get quite the credit that they should for making America, what it is.
No, they do not. And America has become a very anti-union country, as I'm sure you know. And the breaking of the Homestead strike pretty much did in any effort to organize labor for 30, 40 years, I believe.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Another great friend of mine is the historian Charles McCullister, who's a fantastic labor historian. They have a lovely Battle of Homestead Foundation down in Homestead by the old pump house that meets on Wednesday mornings, and I'm a member of that. It's been a real education for me. Yeah, both our countries are similar, particularly during the Reagan Thatcher honeymoon years. Labor was the unions were really pushed back even further again at that time.
So when might we look forward to seeing this movie that you're making?
Well, where
is it?
We were working on it as a play, and then I realized that it had grown into a six play history cycle. And even if you're doing 6 Shakespeare plays, it's hard to get people to come. So I thought I suddenly realized this was really going to reach people and be better as a television series, a limited television series.
So, wonderful.
Fortunately, I've been in 3 of Steven Spielberg's films: Bridge of Spies, BFG, and Ready Player One. And I was able to share the story, my passion for the story, with him, and he liked it and directed us to his Amblin television company. So he's not directly involved, Stephen, but the Amblin television company have commissioned Claire and I now to, because Claire's much better at dialogue than I am, to write this thing, and that's what we're doing, and that's a secondary reason why it's nice to be here at the moment doing Idaspe, because we're able to revisit our friends and the places and sites which inspire us.
Wow! So you're writing this.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got help as well. We've got a lovely guy called Scott Frank who did the Queen's Gambit, mentoring us.
Oh, wonderful. But my gosh, what a yike. So are you going to end up directing it or being in it? Or is that getting ahead of the project?
That's probably getting ahead of it, but I would hope to play in it myself as an actor. And
any character in particular that you got your sights on?
No, not sure yet.
Okay. And any day, we're not going to see this obviously for a year or 2.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. It'll take a long time to do it justice. There are so many amazing stories here from that period, and
it's they deserve. I'm sorry to interrupt you. They do, and I have to tell you.
Go on.
No, I have to tell you that very few Americans know this history. Very few know as much as you two have already voiced. They do not know this history. We are not taught labor history in this country.
I know. I was raised in America, though I'm an Englishman, up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm embarrassed to realize I wasn't taught this history either. I mean, the powerful people, of course, they're allowed to gather together in syndicates, all kinds of things. They know the value of uniting to get things done, but they don't want people to know that our grandfathers and forefathers have tried to unite from a very early time in this nation to fight for things. I mean, the positive aspect of the story is that now a number of things are better. There are laws now about child labor. There is compensation in many workplaces now if you're injured. There is income tax now to try and share the wealth of those who may hold on to their excess wealth a bit greedily. But none of those things existed at the time. You have to go to the anarchists, Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman, to find those kind of mainstream ideas that everyone would expect now. At the time, those people are considered so radical they're thrown in prison and considered to be very, very extreme. So there have been improvements, but I think it's a great shame that labor heroes and heroines, Mother Jones and people are not witnessed and celebrated. People, it's an important thing for us to celebrate our ancestors. It informs the present time. I was down at McKee's Rocks the other day. What an amazing place that is, and hearing the stories of a wonderful guy called John Kane, who I think there's an exhibition about him at the Heinz Historical Center, who was a man who began painting on the sides of boxcars in his lunch breaks. Yeah.
Yes.
And
amazing work.
Yeah.
Yes. So Alexander Berkman, you mentioned, is he going to make it into the movie with his inability at point blank range to take Frick out?
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah, there's a
good.
Yeah, no, there's a very, very interesting. There's a great book by Martha Sanger Frick about a wonderful descendant of Henry Clay Frick, his great-great-granddaughter. And she's written an intimate portrait about Frick, which is very, very interesting about that assassination attempt. But we're primarily here, for Idaspe and this extraordinary recreation of this opera.
May I ask, and let's get back to Idaspe, if somebody listening is saying, "Oh, it's an opera," I don't like opera. Can you do Claire? Can you do a sales job on maybe they should give this a shot?
Well, someone who was an ex-miner, we had dinner with on Saturday, and he'd come to Idaspe on the Friday, and he said, that was my first ever opera. And he said, it wasn't like an opera at all. It was like really, really accessible. And I really loved the story. And it's very simple. It's a story about love. It's just a love story with some beautiful music. So forget about the word opera and think of it more as a musical, a piece of theatre with some gorgeous, gorgeous tunes in it and a great story and lots of love on stage. And that's
I also understand that there is some choreography in here that you've used members of the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater and other dance companies in Pittsburgh.
We have a fantastic choreographer called Antonia Franceschi, who comes from the New York City Ballet. That's her background. And she came to Pittsburgh and auditioned lots of different dancers from different dance disciplines, and she's put together a fantastic core team who are acrobats in the show and modern dance on point. They are absolutely wonderful young people, and again, very diverse, and it's a thrill to work with them and always to work with her. We work together on nearly every project we do, so we have this wonderful vocabulary between us. So Pittsburgh audiences are getting a real treat coming along to this, and it's an all-female design team, by the way. Our costume designer, Ilona Samoji, and lighting, Mary Ellen Stebbings, and scenic designer, Narelle Sissons. They're all my fantastic creative partners in this. And so you're going to see a visual treat as well as hear a musical one too.
Well, I cannot wait. I'm going to be able to see it on its last performance Saturday night, but there are 3 more performances, I believe, on Tuesday,
correct,
and Thursday and Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Yep. And I hope tickets are still available. I have to tell you, it was getting pretty filled up when I tried to get tickets earlier late last week.
I think word is spreading that it's very accessible. It looks gorgeous. Come and see it. Don't wait to get a ticket. Get on the phone now. Get on your website and book one. We're getting standing ovations at the end of the show, which is wonderful. Very pleasing. But you're not going to see these performers all gathered together very often. They're stars that travel and sing all around the world. So we're very lucky to have them in Pittsburgh.
Is there any chance, Claire, that this because it's a resurrected opera and then is sort of reconfigured, that this will go someplace else, perhaps not with this cast, but that some other company somewhere might want to mount a production?
Well, we really hope they will, because we all feel that it deserves to be heard a lot and sort of be part of the standard Baroque repertoire. And so there are lots of festivals around the world, and certainly in America. And we're really hoping that they love this production and that they'd love to have it as part of their season. So let's hope that happens.
And just one other question, just in case people. So the language is it's Italian, right?
It's Italian, yeah. But we've set it in the 1960s in Naples, Italy. So it's when you see it, you'll realize it's very kind of Godfather meets Italian film of that period. You know, it's set in the kind of Italian Camorra. It's very stylish, and so the language is the English translation, which I did, is very much of our own time. So you can read the translation in super titles above the stage while the singers sing in the original Italian from the score. So again, it's very accessible and very easy to follow.
When you direct something like this, you don't go to every performance, do you?
Well, I am actually, because there are only 5 performances. If it's a straight play, no, I wouldn't go to every performance. I go to a lot, and because I love to give them notes, you know, and they like it. They like to know how they can improve their performances or do something different, keep it fresh. And, you know, I feel part of the team, rather like a football coach or tennis coach. You know, you want to go on and give them your support. So I do that. And other directors like Deborah Warner, they also turn up, you know, don't just do the first night and then leave, but they like to come and sort of, you know, see what's happening on stage. And I enjoy it.
How wonderful. We are so lucky to have you here, to have this production here, to have both of your interests in the history here as well. I'm just thrilled about all of that, and I'm hardly alone. And Mark, I just have to tell you one thing, and then I'm going to let you two busy people go. When I read that you lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I almost fell out of my chair, because I grew up in Wisconsin as well. And I mean, when you think of you, a Shakespearean thespian, you sure as heck don't think of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. How the heck? Your dad was a teacher there?
Yeah. You know, the love of Shakespeare goes back to the founding fathers of this country. America's love of Shakespeare is, you know, it's a blessing, actually, I find, because there isn't a patriotism. In England, there's a patriotism added to the love of Shakespeare, which you know, puts a lot of kids off, actually, in school. A lot of kids everywhere in the world are put off, unfortunately, in school. If Shakespeare is used as a kind of forced march to exam paper, it's meant to be a play and a story and something enjoyable. And I was certainly introduced to it that way in Milwaukee by acting in Shakespeare plays in high school, long before I had to answer any, you know, multiple choice questions about Shakespeare or write essays. I don't think I ever did that. So it was a great place for me as a potential Shakespeare actor to grow up and learn about Shakespeare.
Well, I'm sure glad you didn't pick up the accent.
He did, actually. He did when he came. He did have a Milwaukee accent, which rather knocked out of him, I think, didn't it?
Yeah. It's hard to go into auditions in England with an American accent. They limits. They're not so imaginative about that.
Well, exactly, especially that accent. I mean, I have it, and it's so nasal and not particularly appealing.
I don't know.
Oh, really?
I don't think we should be disrespecting the accent of Milwaukee. I think it can be quite expressive, very expressive. Yeah.
Well,
I love all the
have to tell you.
Accents.
Yeah, you do, because Pittsburgh's got a doozy here too. Well, I don't know. It's amazing. I mean, there's a lot of times that people who speak English supposedly can't even understand each other because of the accents, which is fun.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. So I thank you again, both, so much. I can't wait to see Idaspe. I hope there's not an empty seat for the rest of the run, and there shouldn't be. And again, thank you for your amazing work that both of you do. Just amazing.
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks for giving us the time. Yeah, we'll both be there, at each of these next three performances, enjoying it. It's a beautiful theatre, and it's lovely to sit in this community and listen to the opera there. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Please. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, wow. Idaspe, Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, Quantum Theater, Byam Theater. You can get your tickets. I hope you can get your tickets, because from the review I read, from everything I've heard about it, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to see something pretty remarkable and to see extraordinary singers, actors, dancers, the work of the choreographers, the stagers, all that, and Claire Van Kampen's direction. Pretty amazing. And I'm just blown away at their interest in our history. It's amazing, huh? The disinterest in our history by so many people here has always set me. I remember I have a memory of driving into Pittsburgh for the first time after getting a job here. And it would have been December 1980. And I'm driving in, and I'm from Wisconsin. And I'm on the Parkway. I'm following directions because I'm heading to Squirrel Hill or Shady Side. And I see the sign that says Homestead. And it was pointing one way, and Squirrel Hill, and it was pointing the other. And I remember my astonishment when I saw Homestead. I thought, whoa, oh, wow, Homestead. Because I had in college, certainly not in my K through 12 education, I had in college had a course in which I actually had learned some labor history. And so I knew somewhat about Homestead. And it hadn't occurred to me when I was coming here that Homestead would, of course, be here somehow. I just didn't know I'd be so close to it. And to now, where I sit now, I'm a few blocks away from Henry Clay Frick's house, and just a few miles away from Homestead, smack dab in the middle of this. And that story, our history, which has been airbrushed because this has always been a top-down community, where the rich and they have a paternalistic, philanthropic richness here. But the people themselves just sort of have never been able, it seems to me, in Pittsburgh history, to get themselves together, except for these efforts by workers to somehow balance the top-down nature of Pittsburgh culture, Pittsburgh politics, Pittsburgh, all of it. And that obviously began with the Carnegies and Bricks and Mellons and Westinghouses and all that. Don't mean to lump them all together. I don't think Westinghouse was a son of a bitch that some of the others were, or Hines for that matter. I don't know. But we should know more. The fact that Mark Rylance, a Brit and an actor, right, could obviously knows more of our history than most of us, should shame us. And thank God that he and Claire, his wife, are going to be writing this. I'm thrilled to hear it's a series, a made-for-television historical series that will tell that story. Because we need people telling that story now as the country slips back. All the people, the smug right-wingers who don't realize that the reason they have an 8-hour workday or the reason they have anything they've got is a result of the blood, sweat, and tears of these early union organizers. People who put their lives on the line to gain this common dignity for workers. Amazing. Just amazing. Oh, guys. So, yeah, I'm back in Pitt. I drove that a little over 10 hours it took me to get from Green Bay back home here. That's I actually got in the groove, and I had an audiobook, which I still have 20 minutes left on. I think I'm just going to ride around in my car today and finish it. I know I could bring it inside, but it just seems like that's the venue in which I've taken it in. And it's a book that I'd always meant to read, but never did. And it was written in almost 100 years ago. It was written in the 1930s by Sinclair Lewis, who's a brilliant writer. Brilliant writer. Wow. And the book is It Can't Happen Here. And it's a book about America becoming a fascist country. It's a book about America becoming an authoritarian country under the spell of a loutish cult leader with a lot of evil people around him. It is so chilling because so much of what he was warning America about by writing it is absolutely right on the money today. And often as I was listening to certain things in the book where people are making arguments about why the fascists are actually improving things, or why the liberals are fools, and it was as if Sinclair Lewis was writing the book today, not as fiction, but as almost a documentation of our current situation. Frightening. I'm sure at the time the book must have been I'm going to have to look into a reaction to it at the time, because he sets it in real time so that there are real. So, FDR is the president, but he's not running for re-election. And there are other political and journalistic and other characters in the book that were very much alive then, and who he puts in with the groups of fascists, and who he puts in with those who are put in concentration camps or who flee to Canada, is fascinating. It's just fascinating. So if you're looking for a book to read or listen to, that is a hell of a book. Sinclair Lewis. It can't happen here. A phrase obviously repeated many times in the earlier parts of the book before it did happen here. So, wow. Another thing on my way, I just have to say, I saw the most disquieting thing. I'm not sure if I was in Eastern Indiana. No, I wasn't. I mean, Western Indiana. No, Eastern Indiana or Western Ohio. But on the side of the road at one point, as I whizzed by, there was this big brown teddy bear flying with its four legs up in the air. And it was a big one, a kid would just go nuts with this one. And it was lying on the side of the road. And I thought, oh my God, there was just something so, how something out of place like that's it's disquieting. And I thought, how could have, and then not more than a quarter mile, there was another smaller teddy bear that had been thrown, I imagine thrown out a window of a passing car. And man, I can't get it out of my head. I keep trying to imagine what the hell happened. Was it the cruelty of some little sibling in a family? No, because they would have stopped and gotten the teddy bear back, wouldn't they? If the kid had thrown it out. I cannot imagine. Cannot. It wasn't too long ago that I was walking my dog here and came upon a big, huge brown teddy bear. This is the kind that was sort of made into one that you would sit in his lap if you were a toddler. And he was sitting on the street on garbage night, surrounded by black garbage bags. And it broke my heart. And I took a picture of him. And I posted it on my Twitter account with the caption, "He always feared it would end like this." Yeah. Hey, for those of you who are sort of curious about Homestead history. I have right next to me now because I revisited it recently. I think pretty much the definitive book by William Serrin, Serrin, who was a labor reporter for the New York Times for many, many years. I don't know that he's still alive. He ended up then teaching journalism at NYU. But he wrote the definitive book, and it's simply called Homestead, The Glory and Tragedy of an American Steel Town. And in it, he takes in, Homestead from its beginnings, and through the strike, and through until the end of steel in Homestead. The tragedy of an American steel town. It's an amazing read. And we now know that to not know history is to, I think, be doomed to repeat it, to not learn the lessons of history, as clearly so many in this country have not, is to end up in the frightening place that we are now. So, and speaking of that frightening place, I don't want to talk about it today, okay? I figure I'll leave that for tomorrow. Oh, Milton, I just see your question just came up. I am so sorry. Milton asked, if possible, could you ask Ms. Van Kampen if the aria from the opera that has been credited to Vivaldi was actually composed by Broschi, is the famous Sposa son disprezza aria, and is it contained in Idaspe? I don't know. I'm going to suggest that you look in, God, I think it was in Public Source. Carla Booz, the founder and genius behind Quantum Theater, BOOS, wrote a piece. And that was the first time I read about this story of this opera and the aria that she had heard. And it might be in Carla's piece that your question would be answered. And I'm sorry I didn't see this while she was on the show. Forgive me. Gigi writes, your tale of teddy bears reminds me that there is a road which leads to a nearby state park where there is a mailbox with a large stuffed animal tied to it. Further down the road, there's a stuffed animal hanging from a tree. These have been there for years, but every time I see them, I cringe. Poor, sweet, stuffed animals. Yes. Who would think of doing that? Oh, how awful. Oh, how awful. So sorry I haven't seen that. So, well, again, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I can never figure out, so I get no mail today, right? But I get my garbage picked up. So I guess this isn't a city. The city is no longer using Columbus Day as a holiday. They must have put the kibosh on it relatively recently. And I guess did not proclaim it Indigenous Peoples Day where you get the day off. I don't know. Who can keep track? So, guys, thank you so very much for joining me today. And I'll be back tomorrow. And Susan should be joining us. Okay? Enjoy this beautiful day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.